Okay, it says it's live. We got 2 viewers waiting. Oh, I should have told everybody in Discord. So let me make the announcement in Discord real quick that we're live. And if they want to join in, they can text in. Let's see. We are live. Okay, so it looks like everything's looking good. So I'm ready, and right now they're all they can see on the screen is starting soon. So I'm about to click over, and I see Halagon did join us again, but I don't see his video. So I guess he's kind of, well, me and you will kick this off, and then hopefully he'll join us, and I can just add him to the stream. We'll just go from there. So I'm going to do an introduction first, and then I'll ask you to introduce yourself, and then a little bit about your background, so people will be confident in where you come from and kind of knowledge and experience you have. So let me go ahead and switch this over here. Hello, welcome to Three Orcs. This is David, and today's live stream we're going to do an update for this previous week on the Verbobonc campaign guide 576 Common Year. We have a couple guests this week, and we're having trouble getting them in on video. Castitas is with us today, and he's waiting right now for us to talk about his campaign. And we also have Halagon, which I spoke of previously, about all the work he's been doing for the campaign. And he's from Australia, and he's having trouble joining us. So hopefully he pops in soon, and I can add him to the stream. So right now, I'm going to go ahead and switch over to our cams here. And let me see, that might take a second to make sure I can get everybody in on here. Okay, switching over. And let me go ahead and recenter your camera so we can see you, because it looks like you're off camera. So let me go ahead and switch this over. Gotta make sure you fit on screen here. My little window. Almost there. It's a very small window. You're not going to show a lot of you in the screen. It's just be a little tiny window of you, a little icon. There we go. That looks good. All right, I switched you over. So I'm going to lower you a little bit more. Let's see. Make you look a little better. Frame your face better. There we go. Okay, good enough for prime time. Okay, so first, I don't see your name on screen. We don't have that rigged yet, and this is only like the third live stream we've had for Three Orcs. And I have Castitas with us. He's a Prime Three Orcs Patreon member and Discord member that contributes greatly to the campaign and the development of it. And he's running his campaign currently live with this material, and he wants to talk about his campaign and what he's done with the material so far and where his players are at. I felt like he would be a great addition and value to our discussion of how this campaign is developing and the case use as a Dungeon Master, what you can use this campaign for. So, Castitas, welcome to the Three Orcs Live channel. Thank you for joining me.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm really super excited to be here. And just so you know, I've been running this campaign, the Temple of Elemental Evil. This must be my 5th or 6th time. I did it in high school, where I finished the Temple of Elemental Evil, the Scourge of the Slave Lords, and the Queen of the Demon Web Pits. I then did it in college twice. I did it after college once. I did it with some buddies of mine a few years ago. And I'm now doing it with my son, who's 14, and 2 of his buddies who are also 14 years old. And so I've been doing this campaign for a very long time. It's over 40 years. And
Wow.
I've done it in a variety of editions. I've done it with a variety of homebrew rules. And I have to say that the current edition that I'm running with the content you've produced is probably the best I've done so far. So I can't stress enough how much more fun it is with the stuff you've produced. Like, I feel very lucky to have found you quite by accident. I was looking for something on Nulb, I think, because I was going, how am I going to do this adventure? And I stumbled on your website, and since then I've just been really, really happy with what I've done.
That's great to hear, because that encourages me to make more content, knowing that other Dungeon Masters is using it. And I really like to hear what they're using it with, how they're using it, and how it's affecting their campaign, and how their players are enjoying it. So that's one of the reasons why I had you come on here, because you had a lot of great to report. Now I see Hologon joined us too, so we're going to switch over to that screen so I can see both of you at the same time. So Hologon, I see you're on screen here. Can we hear you now?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you hear him?
All right.
To see this? Yes. Perfect. So you look good on camera here. You look fine, and you were with us now live. So thank you for joining us. We had a little bit of problem with Hologon joining us because he's from Australia, and as we know, their internet is upside down there, so it has trouble communicating with the rest of the world. So can you just go ahead and introduce yourself, who you are, and a little bit about your background, and we can go from there with the campaign and stuff we've been working on.
Oh, first off, thanks for having me. So, as David said, I'm an Australian. I'm actually living in Tasmania, which is the southernmost part of Australia. So there's not a lot between me and Antarctica. So if I drop out occasionally, I do apologize. So I've been running Greyhawk games since the early 90s and playing since the late 80s. So this is probably the 6th or 7th time that I've hosted a campaign in Verbobonc. This latest game started in the middle of COVID. We're 105 sessions in, and we've set our game in 591. So it's been really interesting taking part in the campaign guide, because so many of the other guys are setting their games 576, and being in 591, I get to kind of update a lot of characters for my game and kind of see where their destinies lead, based upon the campaign notes we've made. So at present, even though the game is set in Verbobonc, we are largely set within the Gnarley Verge. So I've done a lot of work on rising bandit lords, green dragons. I'm doing an awful lot of work on the elven clans. The game has actually briefly left Verbobonc, and we're actually in an isolated mountain valley in Valuna. So it's kind of interesting to see, if the campaign guide ever moves into the Western Viscounty, I've got a lot of material I can add there.
Wow.
So the last couple of Verbobonc games I've run, like the last one went for 7 years. So it started in 2003 and concluded in 2010. That one was about 300 sessions. And this one is currently, I think, on year 3 or 4, with no end in sight. So I'm a big fan of making epic campaigns. I don't like doing 10 or 20 session stories and then finishing my campaign. For me, it is a cinematic experience that goes forever. So I'm interested to see how long you guys have been hosting your particular games at present, and how many years you plan on moving through. Because my last one started in 575 and went to 585. This one is stuck in 591, but I plan on moving it all the way up to 600.
I'm echoing, so I'm trying to fix it. So Hologon, can you take over while I try to fix this?
Sure. So yeah, I'd like to tell you a little bit about the previous game we had, which was, it started in the village of Homlet with a bunch of teenage kids at 0 level. And the idea was of that campaign, we started off very, very basic. So, the kind of adventures, the kind of trouble that teenage kids would get into. And as they grew older, they started running into evidence of the Second Temple rising again. And they got sort of up in the chain of events, initially as witnesses, because, one of the things I love most about the Temple of Elemental Evil is so many people have played this campaign, and so many times have I run this campaign, that these 0-level characters are seeing their old characters that they played in the 90s running into town, bloodied and beaten from fighting the temple and losing. And, it's been interesting to see kind of the window of the past each time I've run the campaign, moving it forward just incrementally, So, those guys from that campaign, which, I hosted 20 years ago, are now sort of high-level characters that these guys hear stories about, and it inspires them to sort of move on to acts of heroics as well.
Can you hear my double speak now? Am I echoing?
You sound loud and clear to me.
Same here.
Okay, I was just double checking to see if the people on YouTube think I'm still echoing or not. Because I'd like to talk to you more about it. I just want to make sure I'm not echoing anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, go ahead and continue. I'll just wait for them to give me some feedback.
Yeah, no worries. So the current campaign moves in and out of Homlet. We've done an awful lot of stuff in the Gnarley Verge, and for the most part, we intended to just, or I intended rather, to just take the Return to the Temple of Elemental Evil module and make it a little closer to what I thought that module ought to be. I like the idea of intrigue and, the notion that, that Gygax laid down in the original Temple of Elemental Evil, in that there were collaborators.
Collaborators. I hope I don't sound double again. That's why I wanted to say something real quick to see if I fixed it. But go ahead and continue.
So collaborators for the cult amongst the minor nobility of Verbobonc, in the city council, disloyal priests who don't feel like they've gotten a bump through the temple systems. So I really wanted that intrigue in the game, and I really wanted to advance that 12 years. So we've got these bandit lords rising in the Gnarley Forest, and some of them are actually the pawns of nobles in Verbobonc, some of whom are allied with the third cult rising, and others who are just trying to cover their tracks. So they're trying to make sure that old colleagues are neutralized before they can talk. It's been really fun. Like the most fun part of the campaign so far for me is I took the character of Ashrem from the elemental nodes in the original adventure.
I remember that.
And I always liked Ashrem as a character because he was a cultist who was betrayed by his own brother, sacrificed to the elemental nodes, and he'd survived, and he wanted his revenge. And what happens to that guy when he finally gets his revenge and he leaves the temple? And I had him as a hermit in the forest who was bullied by bandits, and he's finally cracked, and he's called upon the powers of elemental evil once again, and he's addicted to power once again. So he's created a bandit army with him as the figurehead. And it was a really nice red herring for the third cult, because people are seeing Ashrem out there and they think that he is the leader of the new cult of elemental evil. So it was a really good story arc going into this tragic, mad, and absolutely psychotic character. That's one of the Bandit Lord ideas I conjured for my game. I also got a Goblin Lord who's moved up from the Underdark, an exiled drow elf who has created a little cult of Kieransali, the drow goddess of undeath. There's, of course, a green dragon. I call her Shosta Clarinus. I think a lot of people would call her Costa Clarinus, but I think that's a bit cheesy. The name's cheesy enough to start with. I'm not going to go into what she's up to, because I know that some of my players will watch this. But she's heavily involved in what's going on in the northern Gnarley Forest. Other broken elements from the old cult who are active near the border of Selene and deeper in the forest. Certain elements from amongst the druids of the old faith and just the woods folk of the Gnarley who are upset with incursions by Verbobonc, Greyhawk, and divers into the woods. So they're actually sort of mobilizing assets to try to counter, these nations claiming their wood, because no one's ever been able to do that in the past. And finally, the elven clans. So, I'm writing a book on Selene, and it's intriguing to me that you've got 4 major elf clans and potentially a host of minor ones that the Living Greyhawk campaign came up with, who are ostensibly loyal to Selene, but they're kind of getting enveloped by all these human lands. And I wanted to create links between those clans and counts and dukes and princes deeper in Selene, and gradually introduce an element of intrigue between the isolationist realm of Selene and its former allies in Verbobonc and further abroad. So that's the general shape of our game as it is.
Your work so far, the articles you've created for the campaign, has a lot of depth to it, a lot of history, a lot of experience writing that stuff. You seem to be one of the Greyhawk lore experts that have come across in a while that seems to know more about this area of Greyhawk more than almost anybody else. Even Sam Weiss, who helps me out with this campaign when it comes to background material, he's not really a lore expert on the particular Temple of Elemental Evil campaign or the general area around it, but he is more an expert on the general lore, the open area of the history of the Urflan and Vecna and things like that. So I count on him to get that information straight too. So you have more detailed knowledge of this general area than he does, but between the two of you, you guys help out a lot. That's for sure. Thank you so much for that.
No, you're welcome.
I know you were talking about the Gnarley Forest, so let me go ahead and bring that up for you. I still have technical problems with the stream, I'm trying to get everything to look good, but I can do my best right now, and then I'll reflect on what we did, and then I'll fix it next time. Let's go ahead and look at the map real quick that you talked about. So you two can't see what I'm showing on screen unless you go to my YouTube channel and watch the stream yourself, but make sure you keep the volume down so it doesn't echo in the microphone. But let's see if you can see it on screen here. I'm going to make sure it's visible. Okay, hopefully you guys on the stream can see that well. I got to make sure I check with chat. I know Brian Joyce and Naz has given me a lot of feedback. Thank you, guys. I appreciate that. Thank you for telling me about my echo. So looking at, you can follow along too. You can go to World Anvil and go to the Viscounty of Verbobonc map, and you can follow along with us as we're talking about the campaigns. And I just want to put this up on screen so that way you can follow along and what we're talking about. And so on screen here, good, you can see it. I don't know how, this is only 1080p stream, by the way, so I don't know how well this text will be viewable on your screen. So Clan Serendil, Clan Meldrin, and Clan Felifel are on screen right now on that map. And what he's talking about, what Hologon was talking about, is how there's a big hole. I mentioned there's a hole in the campaign because nobody's written or developed those 4 clans yet. The 4th clan is more to the north off the map. Real quick, this map was made to center upon the Verbobonc of Viscounty of Verbobonc and the Temple of Elemental Evil campaign. That's why I stopped the map at that edge, on the eastern edge. I didn't go farther than that because that I wasn't focused on the Gnarley Forest as a whole, including the Wild Coast. So I'm thinking I might have to make another map for that part, or just use Anna Meyer's map. Unfortunately, I don't have all 4 clans here, but I realized looking at this, as I put my cursor over one of them, there's very little information about each clan. And this campaign's based, this location is like right in the middle of the open sandbox play area of the campaign, the epic campaign version of the module. Not just the module, but the open campaign, the sandbox campaign in the area, so you can bring it all in and just run this massive campaign in the 500-mile square area. And so a lot of Dungeon Masters, a lot of players like to start their campaign off in the Wild Coast. So you're going to need this stuff as you're traveling back and forth. Then the Forest Road, which you see here on the screen, that's the main highway. That's the merchant road connecting the Wild Coast and Divers and Nolb and the Viscounty of Verbobonc. A lot of activity, especially from the cultists of the Second Rising, the Temple of Elemental Evil. Very important. It's very instrumental in this campaign, this activity, including all those brigands, all those bandits, the cultists themselves. And it's more than just that. It's not just the Moat House cultist. They have an outpost out there. The cultists have other outposts too, and other activities, and they're raiding. You got to remember, they're trying to bring in coin, slaves, material, supplies for the rise, because they're recruiting heavily, and they're taking prisoners, slaves, for lots of reasons, for undead fodder, and for and sacrifices to the altars. And so this whole area is really important, and you really don't want your players to get to Nob anyway until they're at least 5th level. So you want to keep them busy out there, peeling back layers of the onion to find out who's behind all this. I got to tell you again, because you never know, you might get new people in the video and they haven't seen my other videos before. When you run this module, yes, the players know they're playing in the Temple of Elemental Evil module. Their characters do not know this. Everybody in the world, in the land, knows that the Temple of Elemental Evil was put down 7 years ago after the Battle of the Emerald Meadows. It's done for. It's just ruins. It's been peace since. But lately, there's been a rise of bandit activity in the area. And now they seem to be kind of organized. That's where the players come in, peeling back that onion, find out who's involved, where they're coming from, what orders they're getting, their activities, their plans, and all that stuff. So that's why these locations are important, because the characters will be involved going back and forth between all these locations. Divers, Selene to the south, Viscounty of Verbobonc, the city, Valuna, and Thurandi to the north, depending how you run your campaign, where they start from. Mine starts in the city of Verbobonc. So it's important to fill these areas in, because the quest, all these locations have quests. If you look at my material, my modules I sell on DMs, the modules I sell in the Dungeon Masters Guild and the World Anvil website all have quests for every article for your players to get involved, and they're all connected one way or another to the activities of the Temple of Elemental Evil. So that's the layers of the onion I'm talking about. All right, so back to Halligan. So you're talking about. I'm hoping that he can help me. He can actually write the main articles for these 4 clans, because he did a lot of Selene already, and he has a great knowledge of the lore of Selene, the Queen Yolanda, and her relationship with these 4 clans, and they still feel beholden to her. They still feel like they're part of Selene, by the way, and they're also xenophobic. There's no half-elves living in those villages. If you're half-elf, you end up living in like Ostverk or Shirnav or something, or Hamlet. That's where all those half-elves are. But they kind of keep their borders a little bit closed too. You have to be a really good friend to be invited into their village. So a lot of that's going on. And it's not just locations and NPCs in the play area. It's more than that. What if your player's from there? Something to think about. If your player wants to be an elf, what choices do you have? One of the 4 clans, or Selene to the south, or you could be from the Elven Quarter in the city of Verbobonc. You could be from farther away, yes, but that's out of the play area, and it kind of complicates things. It starts shoehorning in and hand waving, and I don't really support that on my website. You're welcome to do it as a Dungeon Master, but I highly suggest you use these options here, because I provide content for that. Do a lot of work. All right, so before we continue with what the plans of what Halligan wants to do, checking my chat here. No comments yet. If you want to make a comment or have a question about the campaign, let us know. But I'd like to hear Costadis. You're still here. Thank you. So Costadis joined the Discord. He joined the Patreon because he found some of my articles, some of my maps. My maps are on Patreon, and I provide them for free on Discord, and the higher resolution versions are for members only on Patreon. And he also probably found some articles or something, and he saw, wow, I need this for my campaign. You know how Dungeon Masters are. They take anything off the internet and bring it into their campaign and use it. And that's why I follow the Wizards of the Coast content policy, so you can do that. And I only provide more higher-end content for members. So anyway, he found the campaign, and he was just he got lucky. I got lucky. He knew that he was going to be running this campaign soon, and he was putting it together. Like a lot of you guys out there are thinking about putting together this campaign. You might be in the middle of a campaign and maybe want some tips on what to do next, how to expand it even more, make it cooler. So anyway, he's here, and I asked him to come join us to tell us what he's doing in his campaign, what he's done so far, what he plans to do next, and some advice I gave him on the material I have. So Okay, that's a great introduction there. So you want to go ahead and let us know about your campaign and your experience, Costadas?
Yeah, totally. So I've done this campaign a lot of times, and I wish I had the creative energy to create the kind of content you guys create, but unfortunately I don't. So I'm very beholden to folks like you who are very generous with your time and energy. So my son wanted to play this campaign, and the first few times I did it, I wasn't entirely satisfied with it. I think part of it, well, most of it was because of the way I ran it. And so last time I ran it, I came up with the idea of essentially treating it of a story about Nulb, right? That the city of Nulb and essentially the greater temple was treating the lower temples as disposable cults, and that every so often they'd get purged, and that every so often the leadership in Nulb would get purged and replaced with new leadership. And so it turns out that radically changed the whole adventure. And all of a sudden, what was, Nulb, and I couldn't figure out what to do with Nulb, my players got really emotionally attached to it. They got emotionally attached to the characters. They got emotionally attached to the locations. They got emotionally attached to protecting the town of Nulb. And so that worked really well. So when I started with my kid, I'm like, I got to do something better than the last time. And so I was stepping back. And one of the frustrations I have with Hamlet, as someone who doesn't have a large amount of creative juices like you guys do, was how do I give it enough color and texture so that it feels like a living place rather than a bunch of NPC cutouts, right? And so for me, it's hard. Look, if you've got the time and energy and the creativity, it's doable, but I don't. But I do know how to take a lot of other people's content and make it fun and gear it towards my players.
Most DMs.
Right. So when I saw this content, I'm like, oh my God, I have found the mother lode.
That's what I hope for when people see my stuff. It hooks them in.
I was like, this is so awesome. This is so awesome. I was kind of like going, well, I'll start with T0 and maybe I'll figure out what I'll do. And then it's like, wait, this guy's got more stuff than I've ever imagined. So we started off in Hamlet and we started doing some of the quests. And then, I was like, going and killing Lareth is lame. It's kind of like, okay, you killed Lareth, but what if Lareth has his own agenda, right? What if Lareth has deeper agendas? What if Lareth doesn't, this is a chaotic evil cult. Why would Lareth be doing what his bosses wanted to do? Right? Lareth, it's not a...
He does.
This isn't a group of people who are loyal to each other. So Lareth's got agendas, and his agendas happen to coincide with the temple. And so what I wanted Hamlet to be was that the players would get there, and, I played a bunch of campaigns with them, and in every village they played, the village is, a bunch of nice people. And here everybody's got an agenda. Whether it's the clerics of Verbobonc who are trying to convert everybody, the clerics of Barry who are protesting against that, the religious conflict, Byrne and Reefus who have been milking funds for years, not building a tower. I've decided to go with that line because why would you build a tower to protect against the threat that doesn't exist, right? So they're incented for the temple to not exist. The old man who's a Kenter, who's the village elder, he's incentived, for nothing to happen because trade goes through here, and he remembers how bad things were and doesn't want everybody. So everybody's trying very hard to convince themselves that the temple isn't there, and so they keep being sent on these quests to go find proof of the bandits, and they keep showing up with proof, and everybody keeps saying, no, you're wrong. It can't possibly be the Temple of Elemental Evil. It can't possibly be related. So finally, my players figured this out. They're like, okay, these guys really don't believe it. And so now they're taking advantage of that to take advantage of the players. So, for example, they meet Lareth. And one of the ideas that, I'm sorry, I know your login, but I keep forgetting your name. 3 Orcs.
David.
Sorry.
David 3 Orcs.
David said hey, Costadas, you should take advantage of what's going on in Sheerbog. I was like, what can I do there? And he's like, well, there's a bunch of raiders. Raiders. And I go, bandits. And I'm like, yes, that's great. What would Lareth want to do? Lareth would want to make sure that all of his competition in the raiding groups are gone, and all the money flows to him because that's how he becomes more powerful. And now these players arrived in his office, and they claim to be, you know, people who took out the Water Temple's tower in the T0 camp in the Abbey and offering their services. And he's like, no, I've got a better job. That's good, but why don't you go take care of these Earth Temple folks? Meanwhile, the Earth Temple folks are being accused of stealing a chest that was actually sent by the county of Verbobonc. That was another pointer that David gave me about the chest from that adventure. I can't remember the name of it.
The Gift of Beauty.
The Gift of Beauty. So like everybody's like thinking that these bandits have the Gift of Beauty. I'm not going to say what happens next, but it'll get more interesting after that. And so like my bigger problem now is that there are so many sandbox threads that I'm kind of like going, I got to get them back to the main quest at some point. But my players are enjoying it. And then it also gives me an opportunity periodically to, you know, some of the quests, and by the way, every one of his locations has so many quests. I bought the Shearbomb book, and it's like, oh my God, there's like 80 quests. There's like 80 different, we could spend a year just going through all of these quests. And it gives me an opportunity to, when we do, like, in one of those quests, you have to go find someone. So they go off and find someone. And I was like, okay, let's have a random encounter. And so the random encounter was from another product I used, and it was a hag in a gingerbread house. And you think to yourself, oh God, that's so lame. But maybe when you're 14 years old, killing the hag in the gingerbread house is kind of a cathartic, liberating thing, which when you're an adult is...
Was that from the Dolmenwood campaign?
No. It's so I have this, I'm going to just show this here, the deck of...
Oh.
Yeah, and it has like random tables for CR 1 through 4 in Forest, and one of them was hag in Forest with gingerbread house. It wasn't the most compelling, you know, involved thing, but the players really got a kick out of killing the hag. Apparently they're young enough to remember the story and have trauma over it.
Well, the trick to running this campaign is make sure all your side quests eventually point towards the Temple of Elemental Evil activities and their collaborations of other organizations out there.
Yeah. So that's the point. That's what I like about what you've done, is that at the end of the day, the temple always shows up somehow.
Or they're working with them, or being organized by them,
or being or some tool of them. Yeah. So, you know, here in Shearbomb, you know, they're definitely going after these bandit raiders who are clearly working for the temple. But there's like other little nuggets that you have that is pretty cool. Like one of the books you can buy in the bookstore as a reference to the Air Temple notes.
Yeah, that's right. I forgot about that.
There's like all these little minor touches you have.
Yeah.
And I'm like, of course such a book would exist, because here's this bookkeeper who's obsessed about books and has lots of books, and wouldn't he have such a thing?
You know, that's part of the understanding of any campaign and players in a campaign. If they've been playing enough, they realize this, that you can go find information out by research, either magically or a local bookstore. So you can find out information that way too in any campaign. That's generally the theme of how things work in the D&D world.
Yeah, I know. It's one of those things where I realized that in a lot of my campaigns, my players are not the curious and inquisitive type. They like to.
Yeah. Well, in the Dolmenwood campaign, we have the Droon, which is an ancient cult, an occult, and they're banned by the church. And even books about them are banned by the church. The only one is like breaking the law. And so a bookstore happens to have one in the back, and he'll whisper this to you: "I have a book for sale. Are you interested? It's only 5,000 gold."
Right. No, you know what? I think that, yeah. Some of my friends are really into lore. Some of them are not into lore. I run a lot of different campaigns, and you know, some of them are like guys who want to show up late at night and play some D&D after a long day of work, and you know, don't complicate the world too much. And others are kind of like pedantically trying to invent long and complicated narratives, and it depends on everybody's time and mood.
Yeah, you know, like I have in one of my groups, I had teachers, high school teachers. They taught other languages like Latin.
Okay.
And so they were really into the lore, and I had to make sure that stuff was in the campaign for them. And also, I had to make sure that every session we had at least one combat session.
Yes. Yeah, that's So my group likes role playing, but every so often they're like, "Can we blow something up now?"
Yeah, going to town takes a long time to role play, but you got other players that get bored and just want to go to bed and wake up the next morning and get to the dungeon. So you have to time that just right too. Like I always tell people up front before they even join the campaign, the expectations of the campaign. Whenever you go back to town, at least 2 hours. I'm telling you right now, even if you've been there before, it's going to take about 2 hours to get out of that place because all the things you got to do. You got to go in, talk to the guards, get to the inn, order drinks, order food, get your rooms, find rumors, talk to some NPCs. The next morning, go shopping, maybe go talk to the captain of the guard or whatever, and you're finally down the road. I realized over the years it takes at least 2 hours to do all that, and that's if I'm edging them along, trying to get them out the door. And I realized some players want to stay and do that all day. They'll play the whole 8-hour session. They would love just to stay there and do that. But other players are getting bored, so I have to push them.
Yeah, no. So one of the things about my sessions is because of my work life and the people I play with, we play in 1.5-hour segments.
Oh, that's short.
Yeah, I know, but it allows us to meet every week. So it's one of those things where if 1.5 hours every week is something the dads that I work with and the kids that I work with can find time in their calendar. More than that, it wouldn't work. Part of the reasons I started writing these summaries is so that when we'd start the game, they would feel it was part of some longer narrative.
Yeah, I get that. It helps to have a session report so they can look it up during the week at work.
Yeah, so we've been I know it's very short, but it works for us. And yeah, we've been doing this for a very long time, and it's a lot of fun. Like I said, the thing that I appreciate most is just the volume of deeper content that allows the players to feel they're interacting with a bigger world, and the DM feeling he's interacting with the bigger world.
Yes.
And the other part I told Dave is like, I love your art, man.
Thank you. Believe it or not, I spent a lot of time in that art. I spent just as much time in that art than I do writing the articles.
Oh, having worked with professional artists over the years to create, one of the things that I do at the end of every campaign is commission a piece of art with the characters and some iconic moment of the adventure. And so I've worked with artists, so I'm just like, yeah, I totally believe that takes a long time, and it's really well done.
Well, I understand that I don't nail it every time, and I use a lot of tools to do it. I use AI tools. I use Photoshop. I use Canva. I have a hand tablet, a drawing tablet. I use all these tools to put it all together, and just layers and layers of editing and mixing them together and color correcting and getting it to work right. Then you got the text over top of it too. So sometimes I get so frustrated, like trying to make a gnome is hard. Because I believe, some people don't agree with me, but I think gnomes should have big eyes, because hobbits don't, and they should have bulbous noses, really fat bulbous noses. That differentiates them from a halfling, and they should have normal kind of ears. They should not have bat-winged goblin ears. That's stupid. That's not a gnome. And so they have this certain stature, and they're short, and they're kind of pudgy, and they're kind of rosy. And so it's hard to get that. It really is difficult and not look like a halfling. It's very difficult. So sometimes I just give up in frustration. Like the guard in Sheer Knob, I'm not totally happy with that image.
I just want you to know my players are delighted.
Okay, good.
Right. Every time I show them one of your images, there's a smile on their face.
Yeah, I do that at school because I run a D&D club. It's not a club. It's a event, and they do it every Friday night for like 3 years now, and there's 50 students, and it's a prep school for smart kids, and it's from 6th grade to senior year, and I do the 6th and 7th grade, and so anyway, they love it. They love the Dolmenwood campaign. So there's a lot. What's great about that campaign, there's a lot of awesome art with it, a lot, and they realize this day and age that's really important for players, and so I put it up on the screen. I put it on the projector behind me on the wall, in the classroom wall, and so whenever I just put it up there, and I role play. I just kind of go like that, and I just role play, and I role play off of it, and they're like in awe, like, wow, that's so cool, and they can imagine it, and it helps them a lot.
No, I totally agree. One of the funny things as an adult playing Dungeons and Dragons is that we take certain things for granted. So I play with kids that are in Montreal, and in Greece, and a cousin of mine in Greece, and my son. And there's that classic story about the gazebo. I don't know whether you guys. There's a story about the bunch of players walk up to a gazebo, and the GM, and they ask the GM what is the gazebo, and they proceed to attack the gazebo, and it turns out that the players didn't know what the word gazebo meant.
Right? Yeah.
The GM gets progressively more and more irritated because he thinks the players are yanking his chain, so he summons Demogorgon. Finally, they all realize that the players didn't know what the word gazebo meant, right? So it turns out that when you're playing with kids of a variety of ages and people from a variety of countries, that not everybody knows all the words. And so
right,
the most useful thing has been pictures, right? Because a lot of fantasy is centered around sort of a very particular cultural bias, right? And if you don't happen to come from it or aren't yet exposed to it because you're 9 years old, there's a challenge. Like, one of the funniest ones was when the kids were like, I was playing a campaign, and they're supposed to go into a library and talk to the librarian. Well, the kids were 8 years old, so they didn't quite understand what you do with a librarian in a library because they hadn't had that experience.
Right, I get that.
Right, and so they're like, you meet the librarian, and they're sitting there going, do you know what a librarian is? No.
No.
Do you know what you do with the librarian? No. So I had to explain that to them. I mean, they knew from in school, but the idea of going to a librarian to get them to give you research and materials was not something that they had. And then I thought to myself, then there's like kids who are used to using Google search and whatnot, and you tell them, go talk to the librarian to find a book. And that would also sound weird. So there's like a whole bunch of things about that. And what I love about your material is it's got pictures and it's got lots of pointers, and it doesn't assume that everybody understands all the nuances of how fantasy should be played.
It helps them visualize. And it's really important because this day and age, it's everything, and any product out there is required really to be successful, because I've seen product that come out from these small publishers, and especially the ones that have higher requirements or where the art comes from. They don't have a lot of art, and it's kind of messy sometimes, which is okay. But the only couple companies I've seen so far personally is Old School Essentials, Dolmenwood, and Shadow Dark has great art too. They have their own style. And but the thing is what's really required is you need a piece of art per page. You really need a piece of art per page. And I made sure creating these articles on this website that had at least 1 or 2 or 3 pieces of art per page with the map, because I wanted to make sure. And so that's why it's taking me so long to create all this stuff, because I'm making sure that happens.
Yeah, I just want to add one more thing. It's like, I also love your verbal description, your text descriptions.
Yeah, I was going to get to that next.
Oh man, I just love them. Like it really, really is awesome. Like,
thank you.
And it's written in a playful, fun style, right? And so it doesn't, one of the things I hate is, you read Gygax. Some of Gygax's writing in.
Oh yeah.
It feels like, oh God, am I really reading this? Maybe it was good 40 years ago, but now when I'm talking to a 15-year-old kid, I'm reading some of those words and I'm like going, I have to go figure out what this word means.
It's hard to read it without jarring, like
Yes.
And mine's easily readable. So at first, my influence was from Dolmenwood writing, that fairy tale type writing, the flavor to it. And then I started realizing that my taste changed a little bit, because I'm a big fan of Glenn Cook of the Black Company series. He's got like 13 books from the 80s and 90s, and it's very militaristic and terse, and a lot of military humor to it, and very dry, depressing. And so I switched to that in Null.
So sure. I have to say, like, again, because I play with a wide variety of kids and it's time zones and whatnots.
Yeah.
The short, simpler writing is a lot easier. I'll also say something. I'm a bit dyslexic, so reading things that are very complicated.
Yeah, right on screen right now is we call it flavor text. It's on the screen right now. I'm showing flavor text from Sheer Knob. Yeah, no, and your flavor text is easy to read, easy to follow, easy to read. So anyway, I just, I was like, as someone who, like, when I was a 13-year-old kid, a 14-year-old kid, I was in Greece and I wanted to introduce a bunch of Greek kids to Dungeons and Dragons, right? And so they didn't know what Dungeons and Dragons was, and I had the Dungeons and Dragons manuals. And if you're dyslexic and nobody's ever explained to you how the first edition rules work,
Well, you're playing a game that resembles Dungeons and Dragons, and let's just leave it at that.
Well, the thing is oh,
but
so yeah, so old modules and old lore, old books are block of text. So if you ever run an old module like the B2, okay, here's a good example, the B2 module. So I think I'm actually referring to the Return to the Border, Keep of the Borderlands. So the gate guard, she's a girl, a woman, guardsman, and she has a key ring on her waist and with 3 keys. Well, this is old module, so it's not going to be Old School Essentials. Old School Essentials is excellent at this. Everything you need to know is on one page. You know how much research you have to do to find out about those keys? You have to read the entire module, the entire keep, to find out where each of those keys, what door they fit. That's insane.
Yes.
It's not referenceable at all.
Yeah. Oh my God. So there I am. I'm trying to play Null, and I just was lost, right? Because I just couldn't. I was 14 years old. Secondly, I had nobody else to play with. I was just, myself with a bunch of Greeks who'd never played Dungeons and Dragons and who'd never read any fantasy books. And we were trying to invent things as we went. And so it was kind of a very weird experience. We had a great time anyway. Playing yours, I feel like, especially for folks who don't have all the time in the world to create content, right? And are looking for a richer experience. And I think this is the place to be, because like my experience with my buddies when I did the Temple of Elemental Evil a few years ago, where they were like, hey, let's play a Temple of Elemental Evil. And we started playing it. And they said, and like one of the players came up with a crazy idea. What if I'm, the secret second stepson of the Viscount?
Right? Wow, that's tough to figure out.
There was a whole backstory involved in it. And so as we started going, then we said, then we were doing Null, and I was kind of like, I don't want to spend my life doing an endless dungeon crawl inside of the 3rd level of the dungeon. I said, what if the real temple was like, you know what, these lower temples screwed up once again. It's time for us to do a house cleaning, right? And there's like a whole bunch of sci-fi narratives where, there's the lower part of the organization, the higher part of the organization, and every so often the lower part of the organization gets wiped out because it's a mistake.
Yeah, that's how it works.
I was like, that's what chaotic evil people would do.
Right. They're at each other's throats. And also the senior leadership is encouraging that, by the way.
Right, yes, of course.
Patrick is.
Right. And so, so I was like, that would be funny. And so, that would be good. And so that just turned the campaign, and it created as a result of that, they created some beloved characters, which we reprised in other adventures over the years. So that was a lot of fun. So that's what I love about your stuff, and that's why I pay money to your Patreon, because I was like, this is the cheapest $20 I could find, like every week. And by the way, the part I love the most is whenever I have a question about what should I do next, Dave's there going, have you tried this?
I'm at the coffee house, so in the daytimes I spend like 4 to 5 hours at the coffee shop. I'm retired now, and I work on this on my laptop drinking coffee, and I got an extra monitor too. And so I dominate this whole table, and I get to check out people coming in and out while I'm working on this, and I answer your questions. And then when I get home at night, I focus on map making, and video making. But about the articles real quick, this has a lot to do with Helligant. So,
hey, Dave, I'm gonna have to drop off in about 12 minutes. So just so you know, unfortunately.
Okay. I get it. Helligant can take over for sure.
Yeah, my family life will take over after that. I'm sorry about that.
That's okay. So about the articles, though, about the writing. So the intentions of my articles is not to replace the original lore, the original box of the World of Greyhawk box set, or any of those supplemental supplements that came out since, like the Adventures of Greyhawk, all those books. My intention is not to replace like the whole entire article for the Druids of the old faith, things like that. So, but there's a problem. It's hard to reference that information at the table while you're role playing. And so if you're running something like the Village of Hamlet, right, and you want to know about the old faith or St. Cuthbert, whatever, that's what this is for. I model my formatting based off Old School Essentials, which is the industry standard right now. It's the bar that they set for layout design, where everything's on one page or a 2-page spread, and it's all bullet pointed and it's terse and to the point, without a lot of waste of flowery with terse descriptions that get right to the point. And so that's why I wrote these articles the way I did with the artwork. And I always encourage people, I always tell them, I'm not trying to discredit the original authors where I got a lot of this information from. I encourage them to go ahead and go out there and read that stuff. Yeah, when you're preparing for your campaign. But at the table, when you're role-playing with your players and you're in the middle of it, that's what these articles are for. And including like the Gnarley Rangers, the Druids of the Gnarly, these deep subjects of ancient lore and history. And on top of all that, real quick, is the dialogue that I write. So it's hard to get all this lore to the players. It really is. You can't just open up the history of Greyhawk and just read it to them. They'll fall asleep. And so what I do is in my dialogue, I'm always adding lore, history, and relationship opinions into the dialogue that I write.
Oh yeah, that's a huge thing. It's like a lot. Yeah, can't stress that enough.
And I only do it to a limited extent. It's just enough to kickstart you as a dungeon master to continue with it, to get you on the roll with it, to kickstart you off, to get you going, to ad lib and do more with it. It's just to get you in the right direction. That's what my intention is when I write that dialogue.
Yep.
So
and it works. Like today, we were in. Let me just see if I can remember where we were. We went to the. Not to the Honey Haven Inn. We went to the bookstore.
Oh, you didn't go to the pond with Calora?
Not yet.
I got her up on the screen right now.
Not yet.
She has a whole quest, by the way.
Oh yeah, everything's got a quest, and it's the scholarly concern. When the players are kind of like being asked, what should I do with the bandits? And they're like, well, the disruption of trade routes by these bandits is not just a local issue. It affects the entire region's flow. And then after I did that, I had this brainwave.
You must help us.
Actually, I go, I did not receive an invitation to a meetup. I wouldn't have gone there because I never go to that meetup, but I didn't have the joy of saying no.
If you look on screen right now, there's a whole bunch of, on the right-hand side, there's one-liners of opinions about the pond. An article. So if you see, as you can see, these are opinions about the pond itself to tip the players off about the pond before they even get to the pond.
Yep.
You can help you kind of put this all together and role play the village.
Yeah, no. So I love what you've done. I mean, and for somebody like me who's like, this is not. I don't have your creative juices, and I also don't have your time. And I'm envious of both, but I love it. It's made this version of the Temple of Elemental Evil the most entertaining to date. And we haven't even gotten to the Temple of Elemental Evil. You haven't even defeated Lareth the Beautiful.
My only advice about all this to be careful with is make sure they level slowly. So because you could find yourself leveling way too fast by doing all these side quests before they even get to Nob.
Yeah. So my take on it is that I kind of am a big fan of milestone achievement. Right. And the reason is for that, because otherwise I've played with enough players who are very mechanical. So I feel like that their motivations, and once they hit a particular point, otherwise what I'm doing is I'm spending a lot of time recalibrating encounters.
Yeah.
To keep them fun. And it's just, I know it's a trade-off, but it also, the other part that it buys me is I'm terrible with my dyslexia. It's hard for me to keep track of everybody's XP counts.
Oh yeah. You got to trust your players to do that, and you can't always trust them to do that either.
Well, I mean, with my collection, my son's a little bit on the dyslexic side, so it's just easier if we just say, okay, you're gaining a level now. Sometimes they're kind of like, why aren't we gaining a level? I said, well, because you haven't achieved the important milestone. And they're like, what's the important milestone? I said, well, you have to go figure what that is.
Yeah.
But so then the question is, well, how do you give people motivation to do these quests? And that's where loot, gold, privileges, minor bonuses. That's one of the other thing I like about your quests is that it's not always just money and gold and treasure. It's like, here's a feast that'll give you a bonus,
or a medallion or a ring.
Right, and those things are meaningful. Players like that. And so what I've discovered is that the leveling is important, but it's more about the challenges and the feeling that I'm getting more invested in the world, and the world is getting more invested in me. And I think that's when you have a game that's much more compelling than when you don't. And if people feel that the world is real and they're making an impact and it's making an impact on them, they get a lot out of that. And for that to happen, you need to have the level of energy and detail that's provided here, which, is great. I mean, as Dave knows, I've taken some of his ideas in different directions.
Yeah.
But that's what I think makes this game the world's greatest game. So
I like hearing about it, and I also want to hear from other Dungeon Masters what they've done too. To come on, and hopefully they can come on the stream and share with us too.
Yeah. So anyway, Dave, like I said, unfortunately, I do have to run. It's 8:00 at night. I have to take care of some family matters. It was great talking to you. Great meeting you, Haligant. You guys are doing great work. And anybody who's thinking about or on the fence about or wants to run the campaign and is daunted by the amount of material they have to create, I have a solution for you. Find Verbobonc campaign guide on Worldanver, join the Patreon, and you might end up playing, never mind 100 sessions, 500 sessions.
Well, thank you for joining us. I appreciate you sharing the details of your campaign, and I thank you for the the love that you sent my way.
All right, man. It was great talking to you. Great meeting with you, Haligant. It was great. I enjoyed this a lot. And just so you know, my kid's really excited. He goes, "Wait, you're going to be on a live YouTube stream?"
I am.
I am. I told him. He's like, "Okay." All right. Have a good evening, guys. Thank you very much.
Yes, you too. Good night.
See you, man.
All right. So we're going to go ahead and bring Haligant on. And I'm going to go ahead and switch screens here. So it's just me and you. There you are. Switch it over. So some of my preparation is on par. Is good. I got a lot of these screens set up just right. But I do have to frame you better, unfortunately. So let's make you look better. So we can see your headshot. The screen's so small, it's hard to click. Almost there. So Haligant, thank you for being patient, waiting for us to discuss the campaign. You know how
no worries at all.
I hear you very well now. Oops.
We've often found that my game, until quite recently, there were two guys playing from the other side of the world, and it was always the same thing. That if there's 5 of us on, everything gets very choppy. The few of us, as people go to bed or go to work, things get clearer.
Have you thought maybe it's you?
It could well be me, man. Like where I live, we're a long way from the world.
Yeah, you are. Well, I remember those old 80s movies in Australia. Not just Crocodile Dundee, but there's a couple others too. But I remember that it showcased how far distant you are.
Yeah, and how much distance there is between places is a very important thing to consider in Australia.
I was like, I need to get everybody's names up on the screen. I'm going to work on that during the week. So Haligant, you patiently listened to his campaign and how it affected how the articles that you helped write affected the campaign. And he's not even in the areas yet that we me and you have been working on so far.
Yeah. It's. I mean, your work on Nulb is so comprehensive. It's quite easy just to spend session after session there.
I know. Well, you got to remember, in the module, you're going back and forth all the time anyway. In the module, in the dungeon, you don't just run. You just don't kill the whole dungeon in one session, in one swoop. A lot of times you return to Nulb. So that's what's great about it, is there's enough there to keep you busy.
Well, I've enjoyed reading Nulb immensely because my game's set in 591. Nulb is actually a ghost town.
I know. It's after the fact.
I think, one live resident left in Nulb. I won't spoil it for anyone.
That sounds so boring.
It is literally a ghost town.
Wow. By the way, real quick, we have other Dungeon Masters in our Discord that are in the same boat. They're running their campaigns in 598 Common Year and up, so you're not alone.
Yeah. But it has been fun, sort of. Whenever I take on board a new character, like from the 576 campaign, there's often a little graph there saying destiny. How did this guy or girl wind up? With the fall of the Second Temple, or many years later, like a surprising number of them have wound up in divers running some pretty shady operations.
Yeah, I'm using your NPCs. We converted them to have the base of operations at a null up to no good, helping and working, collaborating with the cultists from the Temple of Elemental Evil.
Absolutely. And, you know, it is, there's a bit of a responsibility, like, you know, what we're doing with the Temple of Elemental Evil, because it is so dear to so many people with Dungeons and Dragons. I definitely feel a little bit of pressure there to write the best I can for these guys and make it entertaining.
Well, I have a statement. I make this statement every video. I want to make sure I do it again this time. Now, as everybody knows, what I've said many times, the goal of our project, the Verbobonc Campaign Guide 576 Common Year, is to expand the module, to expand the campaign, not to change it, including the original World of Greyhawk box set and any other material that's come out since, and including some of the Living Greyhawk stuff that came out later when it comes to locations and NPCs and organizations, because Anna Myers kind of cemented that stuff in her maps. And as soon as she did that, that kind of made that canon. So you have to take that with a grain of salt. So I go with that. I'm going with the Living Greyhawk locations, NPCs, and organizations to a limited extent, where it still makes sense in the original lore of the World of Greyhawk box set and anything else that came out since then. And I know you're writing that way too. And that's another reason why I have Sam Weiss on board. He's a lore expert of Greyhawk, and he's written Dragon Magazine, Dungeon Magazine. He's got his own Zine, Living Greyhawk, and he's got these great articles with Craig Broughton, the guy from Raging Swan Press. Sorry, I bastardized his name, but he wrote articles too called Mysterious Places for Living Greyhawk, or during that time for one of the Dragon magazines.
Great articles.
Yeah, these guys have the street credit to write 100% accurate. Well, I don't know if it's 100%, but very accurate lore to Greyhawk. I trust them. I trust their writings. I trust what they did. I also trust that Joseph Block did with Greyhawk Ragnar. He spent 15 years of research of Gary Gygax's interviews, Frank Mencher, all the investigation, detailed information of all investigation, all the modules like the G3, the G1, the G2, and all those other modules. He's got 15 years of blogs of research into this to legitimately fix, correct, reshape the Temple of Elemental Evil module, to fix it as Gary Gygax intended. So I make sure, I'm like the middleman between all you guys. I make sure that I put across all your articles with those guys, and I tell you what they say, and make sure that it's all jiving with everybody all at once before I actually commit it to World Anvil.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think when it comes to Greyhawk, I think, we have a canon fire channel. That canon is quite important to people, that we get it right. So it's important to reconcile, all of these different sources and come up with a consistent story, that satisfies the grognards, because you don't want to wake the dragon.
What's really funny about them is they're not as active as they used to be, and there used to be a lot of mudslinging and arguing back in the day, like 10 years ago or more, on Cannonfire and Dragonsfoot.org. And I noticed they're not really that way anymore. Like a lot of those guys kind of lost interest a little bit, and they're not really active in there as much as they used to be. And sometimes they just answer somebody's question. That's about it.
Yeah, it can actually be a bit vexing. Like when particularly on Cannonfire, there were so many fantastic articles written, and you try to get in touch with some of these guys to ask their permission. Like, do you mind if I use your stuff? Because a lot of it is use with permission. Yeah, and they're just not around anymore.
And there's a problem with that. You can't just use it.
You have to rewrite it. Yeah.
The reason you can't use it is some of these articles are unnamed. There's no author. There's no credit at all. But Cannonfire has a policy for the website. Anything posted on there is automatically owned by them, or they hold they'll go after you because you don't have the
IP on it.
Yeah, the IP. Yeah. And so I have some great locations and quests and NPCs for the Nold, and I finally got hold of the guy, and he's a famous author. He's writing books. It's for sale on Amazon, but he didn't give me the permission, so I had to rewrite a whole bunch of articles because of that. And I loved his material, but I couldn't use it.
Yeah. Oh, that's a shame.
I know.
Yeah.
And I rewrote all of it. Some of it's a little bit similar, but I loved it. It was really good stuff. Like the Ranger, Jebediah. Like the temple's got a hit on it. They put out a reward to hit him, to kill him, assassinate him, and so that's going on. And that idea is originally from that author. And it's even the same name. I probably should. I haven't written it yet for the module for DM's Guild, but I probably should rename him, give him a different name. But I did away with the whole background lore of his family, like the original author had. So I'm gonna have a little bit of problem with that. Nobody's really complained yet about any of my work, so I got to make sure I don't step over any line when it comes to that stuff.
Of course.
Yeah, but I appreciate you being involved, because that helps a lot. Because what you do, just to let everybody know, is you write these articles. They're not formatted in any way for anything for World Anvil or the DM's Guild. So, and they're also not written in a way to where they're entwined with the other existing NPCs and lore and organizations in the campaign world on the website. So I take your information and then I put a lot of work into connecting all the dots. Yeah. Got to do that.
I think that's the best way to do it.
Yeah.
Where do you? I mean, so of late, we've quite exhaustively fleshed out Twilight Falls.
Twilight Falls, real quick update on that. I think I did 14 locations are done on World Anvil, but I'm not done yet. There's still several locations I still got to do, but I came to the realization that I was working on the map for the Lizardmen village in the Venzator, and I needed to get that map done. And it's done, by the way. I put a whole video out on that, so you can go on World Anvil. It's fully keyed, all the articles, all the artwork. It's the top side village is done, and so is the bottom side village, but not the map yet. So at nights, I've been working on making a map for the lower levels of the Venzator. I wanted to finish that off first before I finish out Twilight Falls, because I think I'm gonna have to make a map for Twilight Falls. I'm dreading it. It's a lot of work, but I wanted to finish. I wanted to finish the Lizardman first. Also, I haven't put out a module in DM's Guild in 2 months since Christmas, and wow, it's April already. Since January, I need to get another module out, because I got 4 modules so far, and the Village of Noble will be my 5th, and it'll be my biggest one yet. It'll be huge. I'm already on page 40. I mean, halfway through it yet. Oh, that's gonna be way too large. I hope the file isn't too big where the computer will crash. But anyway, so that's going, and I really need to finish that module and publish it. So that's why I put the rest of Twilight Falls on hold for now.
Very good. I think we've got a fair amount of material on Taymouth.
Yeah, but that has to be written in World Anvil now, with all the locations in it too.
And where do you see us going after that?
Well, I ask for volunteers and people to help. And you mentioned several villages that you worked on before that you had done. And so I'm just going with whoever offers material for any location and go from there. Also, I'm waiting for a dungeon master to say, hey, I'm starting my campaign here. I need this. And I actually catered to one DM already a couple of months ago. His campaign was going through that halfling village called Littleborough, and he wanted me to do it real quick. So I actually wrote the main article and like 4 or 5 locations, like an inn, the sheriff's cottage, things like that. And he loved it. And so he used it in his campaign. And so I created it for him. And it needed to be done anyway eventually. But there's a lot of towns and locations and geographical areas that need to be done. So if anybody has a request for doing anything particular, I put it towards the top of the list, because they are my Patreon members. I got to do what they want, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think that one of the things that is most vexing about what the Living Greyhawk guys did with Verbobonc is the way they created the network of nobles. That there are some nobles who, if you know anything about feudal ranks, they actually, based on their titles, outrank the Viscount. So we need to find ways to reconcile those titles with being subordinate to the Viscount. You know what I mean? Like,
Oh yeah.
so there's a marchiness in the west of the Viscounty, and Littleborough actually falls in her lands. And I love the idea of Littleborough, but for me, it should just be a village.
It didn't work
in her lands.
Yeah, you and Sam Weiss had a problem with it, and he helped me with the lore, the background, where those halflings came from originally. He helped me figure that out in the timeline. It was during the Short War. During the Short War, there's a lot of halfling communities that had to go to migrate out of Luna, and this is one of them. They came to the Viscounty area, and that's where they came from in the year something or in something. It's in that article, the background.
Okay.
And he helped me write that one. He helped me figure it out.
Yeah, it does make a good deal of sense.
So this is a good example. I got to make sure everything's good, accurate to the lore. That I'm not just willfully just changing things for the heck of it because it sounds good. I don't do that at all.
Yeah.
I know some of the Living Greyhawks that way, but it's kind of canon, so I don't change anything without a good reason. Like Cienega Valley, hate that name because it's like a small town in Vineyard in California. I find it took me like 6 years to finally got tired of it, and I said, you know what? I asked everybody on Patreon, I'm gonna change the name to Nibs Rest because I saw that other Greyhawk Reborn people, they did it too on their map. So I changed it finally. I finally changed it.
I think it's a great idea. I mean, you reconcile what you can, but sometimes, I have a cheeser meter, and sometimes if it's just too high, something's got to be done.
Yes.
So I actually, for my game, that little valley is just a handful of farms, not even a settlement yet.
Oh.
So I haven't even given it a name. I actually scrubbed it off the map.
Well, the Nibs Run runs right through it, and Nibs Run, you can sail it with a small rowboat, fish along it. You can't really traverse the whole. Oh, yeah, that's the last stop. There's a pier there. That's the last stop along Nibs Run. You can't go farther south than that because the stream is too shallow with a lot of breaks.
I just I basically say that area between the Lordship of Doomwatch, which is what I call Vernon Rufus's domain.
Yeah.
And Etterboke, that whole area is actually a bit of a no man's land in need of a handy party of adventurers to come along and create order, maybe take out a few of the giant spiders and the ettercaps that keep crossing the river.
They're in the Edders.
Yeah.
The Edders,
which is
just north
really
of
just across the way. Yeah.
Oh. Well, in Anna Meyer's map, the Edders are just north of Hamlet, so I see that doesn't make sense either.
Yeah,
because Etterboke's too far away.
Where Cienega is, the Etter Hills are pretty much just across the water. So it's a good excuse to not have that village because the Ettercaps keep eating people.
Well, there's a druid there protecting the village.
Yeah, right.
And also Fort Emerdy is there, Mounted Borderer Fort. So you gotta remember these locations that you didn't do in your campaign. They're from Living Greyhawk, and Living Greyhawk locations are more important than just saying they're from Living Greyhawk. They're from actual modules. Hence, they're from quests and missions. And these quests and missions and modules have NPCs and organizations linked to them, which is really important to put this world together. And not just that, I'm running these adventures too. There's a lot of these quests that Castidas was talking about. All these quests that he was talking about, some of them come from Living Greyhawk, like the Gift of Beauty or Noble Ambitions. So these locations have to exist there for those modules to even work.
100%.
That's why I'm going with them. Also, another big reason, like I said before, Anna Myers, the fact that she put them on her map kind of solidified their canonness,
Yeah, and I love that. Yeah, I love the idea that these maps, they're not creating a canon, but they're filling in the map.
Yeah.
Just enough. So one of the projects I'm working on the side at the moment is Oakland, which is one of the larger towns in the Viscounty that Living Greyhawk never touched. It's from an Oath Journal. I think it's Oath Journal 9, a long time ago now. and it's a couple of paragraphs, and it's a very intriguing idea for a settlement that would have a Lord Mayor who would be the direct vassal of the Viscount. And, it would be a perfect jumping off point for any adventures in the north of the Viscounty, because it would be the largest town by several thousand people. And I love that that's on Anna's map, because now that will create the curiosity, and that makes me want to write about it.
That's great. I'm really thankful that you're writing these big articles for these locations, because these original locations written for these modules I was referring to in Living Greyhawk, there wasn't a lot of information, maybe 1, 2, or 3 paragraphs at the most for these locations. And so I've been taking that information and expanding them greatly, and it helps me a lot that you already kind of done that with legitimate background lore to really solidify, to make this place even better than I probably could have done.
Yeah, I'm certainly happy to help.
Yeah, thank you. I think the next town, I don't know. I know you're doing I can't see on the map here. My new OBS screen here that you guys are looking at, let me bring it over. I can't move the map on the screen, unfortunately. But if you go more east and north, there's more villages there. And I know you've got those already done too, that ready to go.
Yeah, quite a few of them, or at least enough to flesh out quickly.
Yeah, I want to hit them, but I got a feeling there's probably, I don't know, I think there's going to be more interest for some DMs that they're Wild Coast. I've heard a lot of chatter lately on the Greyhawk forums on Facebook of a lot of Wild Coast chatter of integrating the slavers with the Temple of Elemental Evil. And also, Joseph Block wrote the T0 module. And his module starts the whole entire adventure Gnarwell in the Wild Coast. So they're traveling through the heart of the Gnarley Forest to get to Nolb and the village of Hamlet. So I think anything along the line, that area of the Wild Coast, anything through the direct middle, hence the 4 clans, the 4 elf clans of the Gnarley, they really need to be done.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about the 4 elf clans.
Okay.
So these are major clans, like probably the most popular clan for players, since Carl Sargent sort of originally wrote the material on those 4 clans, would be Clan Meldarin. They have the highest number of adventurers, the highest number of half-elves. They're actually quite tolerant of half-elves. They're very friendly with the gnomes of Nambural. So they're kind of a natural spot for the player character to come from. The other 3 clans are a little bit more niche, and they're a little bit more mysterious, particularly for Sylvan Elves, because 2 of those clans, the Fialafel and the Enlanafel, they are essentially, probably majocracy is the wrong term. You've got elders of the clans, and they are primarily high-level clerics, druids, sorcerers, wizards, and the lore of Sylvan Elves are typically portrayed more as rangers and warriors than being mystics. So the road from the Wild Coast to the Viscounty, it passes very close to Clan Enlanafel and Oakvein. And for those of you who don't know much about the Gnarley Forest, Oakvein is an enormous oak tree. It's something like, I think it's 260 feet tall. And most of the clan actually lives in Oakvein and within and on the gigantic oak itself. And they are intended to be very much like the elves of Lothlorien. You have incredibly old, incredibly wise, incredibly Tolkien-esque elves. And the Fialafel are the other major clan that you'll first encounter going from Gnarwell to the Viscounty. And the Fialafel, they are very much a magic-using clan of Sylvan Elves. So they're actually ruled by a council of 5 wizard elders. So those guys are a bit weird as far as Sylvan Elves go, not just because they love magic, but because they're not your typical chaotic good, tree hugging Sylvan Elves. These guys are kind of what you'd expect alignment wise. They'd be lawful neutral.
Okay.
They've got strange rituals, strange marriage customs. The way I'm writing them up, they're almost caste driven.
That makes sense.
So, yeah. So I kind of portray those guys as being a little bit more antagonistic to outsiders, for the simple reason that, it becomes quite clear when you're looking at particularly the rise of the First and Second Temple.
Yes.
That these bandit armies and the First Temple had a lot of goblinoid troops, and they had gnolls and they had ogres. These guys had to come from somewhere. The Hateful Wars essentially wiped out the humanoids from the Lortmill Mountains, and it would have spilled over into the Gnarley Forest and the Weltwood, and these humanoids were driven southeast into the Pomage. So they've come back, and they have come back through the lands of the Fialafel, the Meldarin, and over towards the Temple of Elemental Evil. So you've got bandits moving through the woods, you've got goblinoids, you've got orcs, and none of these guys have been seen in 70 years. And the elves are obviously going to be blaming the humans, because when Selene ruled the forest, this wasn't a problem. Now that you've got the Viscounty as a strong force, you've got, Greyhawk flexing its muscles further down into the Wild Coast. You've got resentment from the elves, and particularly with these 4 clans who still feel beholden to Selene, they will be looking at human adventurers coming through, and they would be seeing them as little different from bandits. So it creates some really interesting role-playing opportunities there. You get to actually portray elves as being suspicious, mistrustful, xenophobic, and perhaps with good reason.
I see that.
Yeah.
I have my article on the screen right now that you can't see, and so everybody's kind of looking at my original article with very little information we have on those clans.
So at present, I've fleshed out the Enlanafel quite a lot, mostly because their lands directly border other Sylvan Elf clans that are detailed within Selene. And the way I see it, the further north you go, the pull of Selene gets a little bit less, and the elves are working more cooperatively with local human organizations like the Druids of the Old Faith and the Gnarley Rangers. So the one clan I haven't talked about yet is Clan Shedendil. These guys are the best warriors amongst the 4 elf clans of the Gnarley. And they are the ones who work the most closely with the Gnarley Rangers. If memory serves, their land also overlaps fairly strongly with places like Cotterstaith, which is the meeting place of the Gnarley Rangers, and also a lot of the Fey lands within the forest also kind of fall around Shedendil. So, getting back to the idea of inventing player characters who would be, I guess, a logical character choice for players. I think Shedendil and Meldarin are the 2 strongest contenders.
I have the map right now on screen showing those 2 locations. So Clan Servendil is the most northern clan, which is basically just outside the borders of the lands of Divers.
Yes. Yeah. Which also raises, that their lands also take in the high road, or they're close to the high road rather.
Yeah.
So, they're not real fond of the humans either. So it's some interesting stuff. There's also another group of elves I'd like to talk about with regards to Verbobonc, or 2 groups really. There is a significant number of elves living within the boundaries of the capital city itself.
Yeah,
they are also
the elven
elves, but they're urban.
They're called the Elven Enclave.
Yes, correct.
Yeah.
So you'd have a few minor clans there related to the major clans. So they are also extremely interesting possibility for player characters, like to actually come from
Well,
the Elven
I have some.
Enclave.
I want to go over a little bit of information that help you write your article.
Mhm.
So I was writing backgrounds for characters in the campaign, and one of the characters wanted to be an elf, and he's a ranger. So I pieced together this background. No, he was half elf. No, he was elf. So anyway, he came from one of the clans, and so recently there's been activity in the forest, and normally the clans of the Gnarley Forest or the Rangers of the Gnarley can handle these problems. That's their job. Well, there's not much they can do when a war band of 500 orcs march through the forest for a certain destination. They were marching for the ancient Sul Temple. They learned of it, and they're taking possession of it. The players have to erase them there. Well, anyway, that's besides the point. The thing is this war band of 500 strong with some hill giants are marching through the forest to get there. And agents of the Temple of Elemental Evil, the brigands that work with them, actually help them plot the course, because they got in contact with the agents they told them about those ancient Sul ruins. And so the orcs are moving there to take possession of the ruins and use it as a staging area to raid into the lands of the Viscounty. So the problem is the Rangers of the Gnarley only travel as one ranger knight with a couple subordinate minor rangers, and so they can't handle a threat like that. All they can do is report and track. Now the elves, this path that they took kind of skirted the clan territory, so they didn't actually enter the clan territory to get there, and but the elves are aware of this, and so anyway, the player from the clan, his father is the diplomat in the clan, but his wife or somebody, I don't know if he's half elf or not, but they have family in the Elven Enclave in the city of Verbobonc. So he needed to go there. I had this dream, this prophecy that they dreamed about the orcs burning the forest to the ground or something. I wrote it all up just like 5 years ago. It's hard to remember. Anyway, they ended up sending his son, who is the character in the party. And so his job, his beginning quest to start this campaign off was to get to the city of Verbobonc and escort his father, the diplomat, there. And while he's there in town, trying to talk to the Council of Lords and the Viscount himself, Viscount Wilfric, to complain and report about things getting out of hand in the Gnarley Forest, and they need help, and also complain that the mounted borders were pulled back, but there's not much they could do in the forest anyway. So anyway, that's where the background came. This is the reason I gave that player to go to the city of Verbobonc to start my campaign in the city of Verbobonc, to actually go, and they stayed at the Elven Enclave. They stayed there in one of their family home there in the enclave. And then while his father was off talking to the Viscount, he was left to his own devices to look to get involved with the campaign. And he met me some friends. It was something like that. So anyway, he ended up getting together with the group and start the campaign from there. So that was the relationship. What I'm getting to is the relationship between the Elven Enclave and Selene and the Elven clans. So the Elven clans reached out to Selene Yolanda for help, and they also reached out to the Elven Enclave for help, and of course trying to get word to the Viscount of Verbobonc about this. So that was the whole thing going on behind that.
It makes for a nice bit of simmering tension in the city, because I mean the Elven Enclave, I mean it essentially goes back to the founding of Verbobonc City.
Yes.
And I mean certainly my game, going back into sort of prehistory, like before Vecna, you had a much larger Elven presence in the Florness, and what is currently Selene is just the latest incarnation of a number of Elven states that have risen and fallen over thousands of years. And so the Elven Enclave would have people whose, grandparents or great-grandparents remember that Selene at one point actually reached as far north as Verbobonc City, reached as far north as Valuna, and you've got these guys who, in the memory of their lifetime, a human state has been founded, which has done an okay job, but it is quite fragile. And these elves would be looking to the south, and fair enough, an isolationist elven state, but seeing an elven state that is perhaps strong enough to protect them from a world that is becoming increasingly unstable. So it's an interesting, I think, simmering tension where you've got these elvish elders within Verbobonc City who are loyal to the Viscounty, but they're keeping a weather eye on the horizon, because the Viscounty is not going from strength to strength.
Well, the reason I brought this all up is because I would like you to add to the lore of what you're doing with those 4 clans, their relationship with the clans of the Elven Enclave and City of Verbobonc.
100%.
That's
So my plan is to expand greatly the 4 major clans, but also talk about sub-clans or minor clans.
Oh, don't make it too complicated.
But several of them were in Living Greyhawk. They were mentioned. There was one particular adventure involving Terravert, the village of Terravert, and the elves were very upset with.
That's on the screen. That's on the screen right now. So Terravert is just 5 miles south of Carter's Meadow. It's 10 miles northwest of Sobbenwich.
Yeah.
Terravert is within the borders of the Viscounty of Verbobonc, by the way.
Correct. And at one point in the Living Greyhawk campaign, the elves actually invaded Terravert and then basically used magic to wipe out the town. They'd just grown so disgruntled. And I believe that was a minor clan. That wasn't one of the major clans. There's also a minor clan over near Beltanda, which is where the werebears of the Gnarley Forest live.
It's off the
And
map.
there's one final clan that's really interesting. It was a very cool idea that the Living Greyhawk guys came up with, the Mist Elves. The Mist Elves are grey elves. I believe they were grey elves who, when the elves retreated south into Selene, the Mist Elves were basically cut off in what is now the Ironwood, and they've spent hundreds of years trying to survive the lycanthropes of the Ironwood, and they've become a bit weird. They've become a bit strange. And Shannis, the ruler of what becomes the town of Glory in the Ironwood, I believe he was one of the Mist Elves.
Okay, let me get over there.
So there is sort of precedent for these minor clans being active. I don't think I'll go into too much detail. I think I'd probably, for the most part, make them sub-clans of the 4 majors. And another thing that bears pointing out with the 4 elf clans of the Gnarley Forest is they have their heartlands, which Anna has put on their map. But it's not like all of Clan Meldurin is in Meldurin's heartlands and all of Fialafel is in the Fialafel heartlands. They're actually intermixed. So the 4 clans are living side by side in each of those heartlands. There's just within those heartlands, each of those clans will be strongest in that area.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's something that's easy to forget about the Gnarly clans.
The whole idea about the Ironwood, I didn't label that. I need to fix that. I need to add a label. But the Ironwood is between Glory and Orpost and Jarl and Reinhurst. It's in this area. You can't see. Yeah, they can see my cursor on screen. So that's the Ironwood. I need to add a label there. But I didn't know elves were there in that wood.
Yeah.
But there's a werewolf problem in that area.
A section of those woods called the Reldwood, which is underneath, and it's still the Ironwood, but it's more safe. It isn't plagued by the lycanthropes like the north. So you'll see that there's probably a little bit more room for settlement there, and I think that part of the wood might have been detailed in the Valuna Living Greyhawk. I'm not 100% sure on that.
Because that's where the border is. That's where the border is. That's why.
Yeah.
It's in the diocese of Dervarnish. The diocese.
Dervarnish, yeah.
Dervarnish.
Dervarnish is one of the largest cities in Valuna.
Yeah.
And if memory serves, it's one of their trade capitals. So, you've got Mitric and Valuna City, which are further north, and Dervarnish is the big trade city in the south.
Okay.
And I like to portray Dervarnish as being a little bit dodgier than the northern cities.
Honestly, I like the idea of having multiple locations for a player to be from, or an NPC, right?
Yeah.
So that's good.
The Ironwood's fantastic as a player character origin story as well, because it is essentially a gauntlet. Like the town of Glory, it essentially was founded around an inn inside a palisade.
Yeah.
And those merchants that had to travel by land would run for that inn before nightfall, because after nightfall, the lycanthropes would change and eat everyone. So, the next day, they would then make a run to get out the other end of the forest before disaster befell.
Well, it's quite obvious that the Ironwood, these elves you're talking about, and the other elves are in Voluna, because the border is right. Glory is right on the other side of the border from Voluna in the Viscounty of Verbobonc. If you look at the map.
Have a quick look now.
I think that's where Anna Myers placed it.
Yeah, right. So yeah, the mist elves would actually be deeper in the forest. Yeah.
So I think that's why I didn't really label that area, because it's outside the campaign area. But I probably should add it since we have the map anyway. I might as well make use of the map. And it also gives another reason for another background possibility for any NPC or PC to be an elf from that location too.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I want to do that later, because right now our immediate need is these 4 clans right in the heart of the Gnarley Forest.
Absolutely. And obviously also the Eastern Viscounty as well, because Temple of Elemental Evil campaign is obviously going to be set in the Verge. So
well, actually, now that you talked about that, okay, Hamlet's done, Sheernab, Nolb, Ostfirk, all done, Nib's Rest, Etterbuck, Penwick, Twilight Falls is almost done. If you look at the map, you know what's missing, what's within 10 miles of Nolb, is Humming's End.
Yeah.
That should be done next. That really should be done, because it is along a trail going to one of the clans.
Yeah.
Two of the clans, actually.
If memory serves, Humming's End was founded by a merchant who wasn't happy, I think, with the way things were going in Twilight Falls, or maybe it was Serbenwich or Gallows Corner, somewhere like that. I think it's really just a thorp. It's a really, really small village. It should be a bit of a knockover.
I actually made a map for that place. It's just quick sketch. It's nothing elaborate. And all these locations, by the way, already been done. I've been working on this campaign for 7 years, even including all the locations you're talking about. I've done all these already on my private website. Awesome. They're not on the public website, but they all need to be rewritten. So whenever you say you're going to do a location, I send you my article just to show you what I've done so far. And most of it is just stuff from the Living Greyhawk modules. It's just stuff I pieced out from the whole entire module, examining every line and every sentence, every paragraph, looking for any shred of information or location description.
Absolutely.
That's what I did.
Yeah, it can be something as random as just an inn name,
Yeah, or an NPC or
miles down the road. Yeah.
So it took a lot of work doing that research. And I've been working on this for 7 years. So
yeah, I mean, I can't even remember how I managed to get a hold of some of these Living Greyhawk adventures, but I got the sense that the way these tournaments were set up is, everyone would rock up, and then they'd want to get down to it as quick as possible. They were mostly just one shots. What we call side trek adventures. So all very light on detail. It'd be nice if some of these guys would come out of the woodwork and donate their adventures and some of their own notes that they actually wrote when they came up with these adventures.
I can imagine how these guys feel, the way Awachi treated them and how the culture treated them, the fans, the players, the whole industry. It's just ungratefulness to all the immense work they did that they probably felt. I felt that way when I created my own convention, Hexacon. I'm the founder of Hexacon back in '91. And it went on for like 9 years, but after the second year, I quit. I went back to college, and And I just felt they were ungrateful, the way they acted, and I felt like it was just too much. It wasn't worth it. I'm not getting paid for this.
Yeah.
What am I dealing with these people for? They're mean. They get nasty and mean sometimes, and I felt like it was a chore. I wasn't getting paid for it, and it wasn't as fun just going to a convention and going to the parties and gaming.
Yeah. So, absolutely.
Yeah. But that was after I worked with TSR. I've worked with them for 3 years.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, I think we went on for like almost 2 hours now on our live stream.
Absolutely. I've actually got to go get my game ready.
Oh, okay. Well, I'd like to talk more about this. And if I do this once a week. I didn't get to talk about what I did this week so far. What my plan is to do next week. I kind of mentioned it during our live stream, what I've been working on. But that's what these live streams are supposed to be for: an update what I did all week, and an update of what I plan to do the following week, so people can follow the progress of this project.
Very good. Yeah.
Okay, well, I really appreciate you being on the live stream with me, Heligon. I really value your opinion and the work you do with me. So I'm just overjoyed by all of it.
Likewise, man. I write quickly, and I'm often stunned by how much more you get done than I do. Yeah.
You gotta remember, a lot of this stuff I already wrote. I'm just kind of rewriting it.
Yeah.
7 years of it, so. Okay, well, thank you, Heligon, for joining me. I'm going to let you guys all go, and I'm going to wrap this up, and we'll end the stream.
All right, man. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for having me, too. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and go back to the main screen here and wrap this up. Thank you for joining the live stream. I'm David with 3 Orcs, and we had a couple guests this time of our live stream weekly at 7 p.m. on MST time to do a live recap of our project for the Temple of Elemental Evil in the World of Greyhawk campaign. I hope you like what you heard so far. You're welcome to join us if you're interested in joining us and talking about your campaign of what you've done in the area, and including using the lore and the articles I created for this campaign. You're welcome to join us, because we'd like to hear what other Dungeon Masters are doing with the campaign and any ideas that they have too. Well, go ahead and post down below your comments, but you can also more than welcome to join our 3 Orcs Discord, where we talk about this every day, all day long, working on this active project. Everything's a work in progress, and everybody's helping, pitching in, giving their advice, or writing articles like Heligon is. And also they give their opinion on whether they like this specific piece of art or how that article is. And, I always ask questions, what they think of something. And I also get requests of what to work on next. So also come to my Patreon. A lot of this stuff is free, the maps and things, but the high resolution versions, you have to be a Patreon member to get. And I am constantly posting articles almost daily on there. So, well, thank you for joining my live stream, and I hope your players enjoyed your campaign as much as mine have over the years. And may your dice ever roll true.